My name is Chase McPherson. I grew up during the golden age of Nickelodeon and dreamed of being on one of their classic shows. When that didn't happen, I dreamt up one of my own. This is What Do You Want From Me, the podcast all about me, but directed by you. You tell me what aspects of my life you want to hear about, and I attempt to entertain you for a short while. My formative years were dominated by television. It was a big brother, a babysitter, a tutor, and a best friend at times when I needed all of them. In particular, favorite was a program called You Can't Do That on Television. I can honestly say it planted the seeds of my sense of humor, my urge to write, and my desire to perform. And along the way, I even earned a little local fame for a TV show I created, which never actually existed. This is Episode 6, Slime Time. Before I truly learned how to read, I knew it as the show with the triangles. The main set for You Can't Do That on Television was a geodesic dome, a giant version of the metal schoolyard jungle gyms of the day. And I was more fascinated by the interstitial and sketch setups that went down on this set, and that was mostly due to the ever-present threat of green slime. It would take far too long to explain the full history of this show, the slime, and its impact on pop culture. Visit the show's Twitter after you listen. I'll pop some links to some great resources for that. Seeing kids get slimed was very appealing to me, and I wanted so badly to get that feeling in person. I wanted to go to the show with the triangles, which I didn't know at the time was actually made in Canada. And later, when it opened Nickelodeon Studios at Universal Studios, Orlando, Florida, where sliming was a daily ritual. But finances and other circumstances never allowed it. But that never stopped me. Many is the time I got in trouble for sliming myself with various substances: milk, cereal, oatmeal, stirred up Jell-O. This continued well into my elementary school years. But the slapstick comedy and self-admittedly bad jokes and cheap production values made for some great TV to this kid. And when the show eventually left the air, and my folks got rid of cable altogether, You Can't Do That on Television became a distant memory. Then I got my first modern computer complete with internet access the summer of 1999, and one of the first things I did was look the show up. I found a VHS tape trading group that provided me with a single 8-hour videotape with recordings of the show. That summer was spent watching those episodes ad nauseum. When freshman year of high school started up that fall, an idea had popped into my head. What if I wrote my own version of this show, using my friends, or in most cases acquaintances, and even some of my teachers, as the quote-unquote actors? One evening, I sat down at the keyboard and began typing. About an hour later, I had the first script entirely written. You might think I set myself as the host of this show. Oddly, I did not. I went for one of my concert bandmates, Melissa. She was an oddball, even by my own standards. Or maybe I just held her to an odder standard for the purposes of making her the host of this show. In fact, I gave the title to her as well. I didn't make this a reboot of You Can't Do That on Television in the given sense of the word. I called it Melissa, as seen on TV. And whereas You Can't Do That on Television utilized green slime, water, and pies as slapstick comedy elements, I used blue slime and water and pies as slapstick comedy elements. I even chose a theme song for the show in much the same way. I picked an existing tune, in this case, a disused game show theme. I picked a recording of 80s Hollywood squares that I had found on a website, and slipped it into the fake opening title sequence that I had created for myself entirely in Microsoft PowerPoint. I did try writing an original running gag, something about the backstage area being cursed, and anytime any liquid was mentioned, that substance would fall on a person. Almost always me. The format of my show is much the same as You Can't. Each episode would focus on a centralized theme or topic, and the sketches would somehow be related. For example, this excerpt from a script I still have in my possession, the episode topic is hobbies. Fade up on a graphic depicting Martha Stewart, dressed as a chicken, sitting on a large bird nest, sparkling jewels seeming to be directly under her. The announcer says, "Martha Stewart makes Fabergé eggs the old-fashioned way will not be seen at this time, in order that we may bring you this show, which has a lot of egg on its face." We fade out from the graphic and fade up on a classroom set. Melissa stands behind a teacher's lectern, while Heather, Eric, and Chase sit at various desks quietly. Melissa bangs her gavel on the lectern to command attention. Melissa, "Order! Order! Order!" No one has been speaking, so the three kids stare at her like she's crazy. Melissa, "Oh, thank you. Anywhoozits, this meeting of the hobby club will now come to order. Are there any new hobbies?" Chase rises. Chase, "Madam Hobbymeister, I discovered this new hobby, which I call egg whipping." Melissa, "Egg whipping? Pray tell." Chase reaches down to produce a carton of 6 eggs and a mixing bowl. Chase, "Certainly. You simply take a half dozen extra-large double-A New Jersey eggs, viz., he holds up the carton of eggs. Then you place the eggs in a mixing bowl. He places the entire carton into the bowl. Separate them. He opens the carton and holds up each egg before dropping them one by one into the bowl, shells and all. Then you take an egg beater. He reaches down with his free arm to produce a whisk. Whip the eggs until they become one big mess. He does this. And then he dumps the contents of the bowl over his head. Melissa, how very, are there any new hobbies? Continued silence from the other children. Chase just stands in place, bowl overhead, dripping. Heather rises. Melissa recognizes her. Heather, I move that we cancel this sketch and start the show. Eric, I second that motion. Melissa, motion carries. She hits the gavel twice, and we wipe to the opening credits. Other sketches in this episode included mimes in training who were describing their actions to the audience, unaware that mimes are not supposed to talk. Giving makeovers, which includes removal of the entire face, leading to the punchline, "I haven't got my face on yet." And a running gag in which collections of an insane amount of items, stamps, dried flowers, coins, are dumped on the main set, usually to the burial of one or more cast members. Going back through these sketches, most borrowed heavily from gags or scenes I'd seen from my inspiration, Saturday Night Live, all that, and any other number of references. I would crank out these scripts on a regular, nearly obsessive basis, print them, and share them with the kids and adults who I, quote, cast in the show. With the exception of the supportive adults, the reaction was mostly confusion and bemusement. So I posted the scripts online, sharing them with the You Can't Do That fan base that I had nestled myself within. I got more positive support there, perhaps because I was among other like-minded individuals. I also sent a script to the star of the show, Christine McGlade, who was very courteous and supportive and even mentioned me on her podcast when podcasting was just starting out. Thank you, Christine. They suggested I try to get the show made. Well, Christine didn't, but the fans did. Being preteens and all, we didn't understand things like copyright infringement or libel law, etc. So the scripts I sent off to places like Nickelodeon, PBS, even the producers of The Red Green Show, to keep with the Canadian tie, came back with apology letters. I kept writing and posting all through high school. In fact, at one point, I got attention from the local newspaper, and in promotion for the website, the reporter came to school to photograph me, one of the kids I wrote into the show, Elizabeth, and my band director, Beth. And, of course, I brought slime makings with me. A recipe directly from the parent show's history: flour, water, baby shampoo, and Jell-O powder. We took the picture outside the band hall. I had whipped up the mixture in a plastic container and gave it to Elizabeth. Beth had given her one of the old plastic ponchos meant for covering band members and instruments when we played out in the rain. Beth stayed well behind the both of us. The shoot was only about a minute long because you could really only do the bit once. The article and photo caught the eye of the local sports store, who offered to actually print up merchandise with the show's logo that I'd created, and for a short period I actually sold a handful of mugs and shirts online to anyone who was interested. The blue slime we had used for that shirt stained like you wouldn't believe, and the shirt I wore that day quickly went to the rag pile. The splatters stayed on the band hall concrete path for several weeks and all throughout the rainy season. I tried continuing to write the show even as I entered college, but that quickly fizzled out. Between not actually being around my friends to draw sketch ideas from, I was going through a major fish-out-of-water depression. But that's a story for another time. Now, though, a side note. This week, I began a journey which will hopefully see me undergo weight loss surgery later this year. It was not a decision I took lightly. I've been overweight since 3rd grade, and likely obese since not much longer. At my worst, I was 310 pounds. Since then, I've been on countless diets, programs. I forced myself to be more active, even if it meant buying an under-the-desk cycling device to use while I typed at my desk. I'm currently 240 pounds after a long stretch with no further weight loss. I'm still considered morbidly obese, taking my height into consideration. In 2014, I was diagnosed as diabetic. I'd likely been so for many years, but between infrequent doctor's visits and unchecked depression, it had never been fully examined. My bariatric surgeon is convinced a sleeve gastrectomy, that's where they'd actually remove a part of my stomach to drastically reduce its capacity, would not only help me over the weight loss hump and get me back to an ideal weight, but it would likely also reverse the diabetes. I'm going for it. There's a lot of work to do before the surgery is even scheduled. That includes psychological visits, nutrition classes, and saving a ton of money. This is not a cheap procedure, and I have not even met my insurance deductibles from last year. I'm crossing fingers that once stimulus money comes in, at least my copay will be covered, but it's that deductible I'm most concerned about. That's where the metaphorical tip jar comes in. If you like the stories I've told so far and would like me to continue, or even if you don't particularly care for the podcast but would like to support my weight loss journey, you can donate to my Ko-Fi account. The link's available on our website and is tweeted out on a regular basis. I'll update you on my preparations for surgery here as they happen. For now, that does it for this edition of What Do You Want From Me? This podcast now has an official website. You can catch up on past episodes at whatdoyouwant.info. You can reach out to me on Twitter. This show's account is What Do You Want Cast, that's the letter U, not the word, and my own handle is by Chase McP. Each week following a podcast release, I post a poll with options for the next episode, and I'm always listening for what you want me to talk about next. Until next time, folks, I'm Chase McPherson. A little slime never hurt anybody, unless you grew up in a fully carpeted household and had parents who believed in paddling. Now you know why I'm sometimes called a tight ass. Be well.
A production of D20NN Studios.